you can't wait till that life event happens and stares you in the face and helps you realize you didn't plan correctly.
There's a duality. The financial professional who is methodical about their own continuity and succession plan becomes even more attractive to clients who have their own continuity and succession and family investment legacy issues.
The idea of succession is a whale. You're never going to eat it unless you start one bite at a time.
Welcome to the Total Succession Show. I'm your host, Tyson Ray, joined by Kim Cochenour. We're glad you're here. Subscribe at totalsuccession.com/podcast and let each episode guide you closer to a confident, well-planned exit. Today's conversation just might be the nudge you need to start preparing for what's next.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Total Succession Podcast. Tyson, when we talk about succession, we often actually focus on the founder, their plans, and their future. But the truth of it is people feel the most impact of this transition is actually the clients. And that's why we brought Duncan MacPherson on with us today.
I am so excited to have Duncan on. 27 years in the business. And I think 25 years ago, I happened to pick up a book that Duncan authored, and it just inspired me to kind of, wait a second, this just makes sense. And why can't we do some of these things? And that a few years later, I had an opportunity to meet him at conferences and different things, and we've kind of been friends ever since. He's kind of been a mentor and a coach, and we're just excited to have him on and allow him to share his wisdom today with you who are hearing this.
Yeah, so Duncan, being a true expert, he is there to help advisors create the client experience that lives beyond the founder. So Duncan, officially welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you, Kim and Tyson. I've been looking forward to this since it went onto the calendar. And your team is the embodiment of professionalism. And Tyson, over the years, I think I've learned as much from you as you might have received from us. But as a team, you walk the talk. Your adoption and deployment of client-centered practice management is unrivaled. So yeah, it's nice to talk to somebody from the field who's actually bringing this to life.
Geez, Duncan, thank you. That's just wonderful to hear from the outside in. That just feels great. So for those listening who don't know who you are, can you just give them a quick intro, your background in this space, why you care so much about helping advisors prepare for this next chapter? Just let them know who you are.
Yeah, thanks. Well, I am the classic 30-year overnight success story. I started accidentally, actually. I had a marketing company back in the early 90s, and about 20% of my clients were in the financial services space. I had some friends who became financial advisors. I didn't really know much about the sector, but I started seeing how they would conduct themselves. They started asking me for ideas on business development. And I got to tell you, I gave them some very basic ideas. Still, one of my favorites is I said, hey, because they were talking about sending out Christmas cards. And I said, you know what you should do? You should put some lumpy mail in the envelope. So when they get it, they're really curious. It's not just another Christmas card. And my logic was, let's put in a fridge magnet, because whenever I go to someone's house, I'm always in their kitchen looking at their fridge or in their fridge. So I said, let's turn their fridges into billboards. And I said, let's put a quote on the fridge magnet. And the quote was by Winston Churchill. And the quote said, saving money is a very fine thing, especially if your parents have done it for you. So that's how sophisticated my marketing ideas were back in the mid 90s. But they were effective, and they had an impact. And my phone started ringing, and in the middle 90s, I still had a foot on the dock and a foot on the boat. I wasn't all in. But then I started to see what separates the best from the rest in terms of how people conducted themselves in this space. And one of the things I noticed, and this is true for you, is that the most effective, it wasn't a job. It's a calling. Like the responsibility of managing someone's money as a fiduciary is so significant, but those who viewed it as a calling, they were the most attractive in the space. And that really got my attention. So in the late 90s, sort of 2000, I went all in, became a coach, and then I noticed something else. And again, the most effective financial professionals emerged and put even more distance between themselves and the pack during periods of volatility.
Mm.
The voice of reason, the signal to noise ratio, the ability to help somebody truly look to the future with anticipation instead of apprehension, they just became indispensable and so valuable to their clients. And counterintuitive, those advisors grew during periods of headwinds and friction because they became so referable. So that's sort of it in a nutshell. I love what I do. I love with people I get to work with along the way. But that's my story. I know I find it more interesting than you, but I want to hear it again. So thanks for asking.
Always. Well, and I think, Duncan, you said it really well. Your goal is to help those advisors kind of separate themselves. They can be the best from the rest. So, for those listening, they're here to kind of understand succession. So, what are you seeing in that bigger picture of the landscape of the retiring advisors? How are you seeing the best from the rest kind of separate themselves as we're getting ready to set the stage for this big transition in our industry?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I'll try not to get too wordy here, but I'm very fortunate. I mean, there's certain things you cannot learn in a simulator. You have to be there in real time. And I'm fortunate in that I've worked with some of the best teams in the business through the 4 progressions of what it means to be a financial professional. In the early days, Tyson, right, it would start with just, hey, I want to be viable. I want to be sustainable. So they focus on growing. And the best advisors would not go out and try to find new clients. They would be found by people because they would be referable. So organic growth through introductions, that's the first step. Then as they start growing, their shift in mindset is, okay, it's not a book of business, it's a business. So they start to add teaming. They start to add to their bench strength. And, obviously, in the spirit of plateau avoidance, just keep that growing. Then the third progression is scaling. This is where the proof of concept, their business, they're running the business like a business, and they're not transactionally working in the business, they're working on the business. So they build thought leadership, intellectual property, and process. But it all culminates, every investment of effort they make culminates in their end game and exit strategy. And this is what I love about this space. It's so unique, is that there's a duality. The financial professional who is methodical about their own continuity and succession plan becomes even more attractive to clients who have their own continuity and succession and family investment legacy issues. Like, I know as a team, you're very methodical and deliberate about helping clients prepare their heirs for the responsibility of financial independence before it shifts from earned money, first generation earned money, to second generation found money. That's a very meaningful deliverable. And I know you take that very seriously. So we've seen that progression. We work with teams in all 4 of those sort of stepping stones. And those who just are, the clay is soft, they're coachable, they're deliberate. They get into that sweet spot, the duality, where they become more attractive to their clients because they themselves have cracked that code.
Well, I like that you kind of broke it down into those 3 different segments of how you can see the business grow. And being here at our firm, I've seen that progression, and it's really fun to actually watch and know that other peers in the industry are kind of experiencing that same thing.
But then there's the 4th stage where now they're looking to exit, whatever that means to you as you're listening to this. And that's become very different from here. It's 1 or 2 times revenue to back to the firm or back to the custodian or back to the broker next door. Share a little bit about what you've seen on the landscape of how succession has changed over the last couple of years and kind of what you see in the next couple of years coming with, I believe it's 30% or more financial advisors exiting with about 40% of the assets under or AUM of the industry.
Right. Well, yeah, it's very personal in terms of how they're going to approach and shape their exit and their succession plan. I mean, the one that was the most counterintuitive for me were the advisors who they gave of themselves. They were so incredibly client-centered. They grew like crazy. And they got to a point where they're like, I don't really want to leave the business. I love what I do. I do want the business to serve my life because there's some other things that I've not gotten to in my life that I want to get to. So for some advisors, they grow down. So as they've been building professional contrast in their approach to differentiate themselves from the pack, then they say, okay, I really want to simplify things. So let's just say, guys, there's an advisor with 400 clients, and they take 350 of those clients and they assign them and give them a very gradual, elevated transition to somebody who's like-minded. It'll be a real soft landing for everybody. And then that initial advisor has 50 clients. So they keep their finger in the pulse. And what ends up happening, which is incredible, they're so incredibly rejuvenated because, that not the hassle factor, but just the weight of 400 clients down to 50 is different. But in creating that professional scarcity now I'm working with 50 clients, they grow further up market. And now they're more attractive to those very complex, sophisticated clients. And because of the rejuvenation, they say, okay, I was thinking about winding down, but maybe I'm going to give this another sort of 5 or 10 years because I'm playing over here. That I did not see coming. And that has been incredible to witness. But for the most part, the most enlightened advisors are the ones that are just incredibly deliberate and methodical about the fit of the protege and the deepening of the bench, and then depersonalizing the business. Like Tyson, you've done a great job on this. It's not the Tyson show. Like, you have incredible bench strength, talent, process, and you've sort of elevated yourself to thought leadership, subject matter expertise. You're still obviously very much involved, but it's just a different dynamic, and an enlightened client appreciates that.
And then the other side, or the other extreme of that, is I can think of a friend not too far away from me that because they were looking at their succession, and then they looked at private equity and looked at an acquirer, and they took the biggest check they could take, and they weren't expecting after that the acquirer gutted the team. He's basically in an office now by himself. This whole grow down isn't existing because now it's just him earning his earn out, hating what he does. Great, he got this pile of money, but he's got a different stress and some regrets, and the people that helped him get there can't, so this stress, I think, that people are looking at when they go into succession, you really kind of have these categories of internal, external. You have the categories of based on what the multiples are worth. Can the internal team even absorb? Can they even get the underwriting from the bank to let the advisor at some point get out? Speak into what you've seen on your end of what the pros and cons of internal or external, or kind of what this landscape is looking like as people that maybe haven't built that bench or are trying to decide, do I want to grow down or do I just want to get out because I'm tired of the regulation? They just burn themselves out, that they don't have the ability to even have the patience to hire on the team or do that transition because they're afraid to let go, or they're not wired for that, or their spouse wants them out.
Well, I'm a big fan of incrementalism and cause and effect. Good, methodical activity will lead to productivity outcomes. So I'm saying, like a broken record to people, like, don't wait. Like, you can't be kicking this can down the road. I know it's big. I know it's ominous. I know it's complex. But just chip away. And as you guys would know, like, just begin with the end in mind. Like, what does this look like for you? What does nirvana look like for you if this all plays out beautifully? Because Tyson, to your point, the anticlimax of some outcomes that I've seen, like, I wish I had $1 for every time I said to an advisor, it's not what you get and how much you earn. It's who you become and the impact you have on others. Don't just focus on making a profit. Leave a profit be very unreasonable about leaving a profit with your team and your clients, making sure that everybody is taken care of impeccably. So there's no anti-climax. There's no sort of seller's remorse or any adverse incomes. Be deliberate, be gradual, be incremental. I know that sounds oversimplified, but that's the mindset I think somebody has to take towards this.
Do you think that part of why some advisors struggle with thinking about their end in mind is that their focus on their client's book forever has just been growing, growing, growing? They've not actually worked with their clients to even think about their end in mind. They're not focused on thinking about what that money is for. So they've not even built a career around thinking about their practice that way for their own clients, let alone themselves.
Yeah, I mean, that's the number one reason why advisors, and I'm talking about well-intentioned, high moral compass advisors, kick the can down the road, is because they convince themselves, I'll get to it. It's not urgent, and I'm busy. I'm being productive. I'm being relevant. So they sort of delay that. And the problem is, everyone else's success and achievement starts to come at their own expense. Okay. And again, one of my broken record phrases is you cannot pour from an empty cup. The best way to take care of your team and your clients, take impeccable care of yourself. And then what comes of that is an impeccable congruency, where it's like, I'm eating my own cooking. I'm not just telling you to do something because I think this is good ideas. I am living this myself. And what's really key, in my view, is as an advisor, don't wait until your clients start coming to you saying, hey, what happens to us when you're out of the picture? Like, when are you going to retire? Don't wait for that. Like, get out in front of that and just tell them,
Mhm.
look, I want to be indispensable to my clients. My clients' needs are accelerating, they're evolving, they're more sophisticated. So, in order to go deeper from a planning perspective with my clients, I'm going to address my own continuity and succession planning issues in real time. That's very compelling, very attractive.
Well, and I think it's like, half the population of America doesn't have an estate plan, and yet they're all going to die at some point. The hard part of the joy of doing the client focused, having these relationships, yeah, and takes away from the reality that it's mind-boggling to me, Duncan. We've known each other for almost 25 years, and it seems like yesterday, right? We don't feel like we're getting older or that the time is ticking away. But I'm mindful of the first partner I was with, who I was the junior advisor when he was 68. He left the business at 72 after his wife of 50 years passed away, who wanted him out of the business, wanted him to retire. And we allow these relationships that are important maybe to blind us from a reality of what we really worked all these years for. And just getting your mind around what is your plan. And I think sometimes the mistake advisors make, I know the biggest mistakes I've made in my life were because I didn't have an advisor advising me, because I'm an advisor. So why would I get an advisor?
Mhm.
And whether it's coaching or colleagues or having someone else walk you through, what do you really want, and asking those planning questions, because we tell clients you can't do this yourself. You need someone to help you do that. Well, if you're listening to this, you're an advisor, you need help doing this if you haven't already done it.
So first of all, and Kim, you probably know this, it's getting serious and borderline emotional when Tyson closes his eyes, well, as he's talking. Like, it's so deep, it's like going to be something impactful is coming.
It's coming. Yeah, I
Yeah,
do
it's
know.
coming. It's coming. Well, Tyson, you and I have been around long enough, and we know each other well enough. Everybody's got blind spots.
Yeah.
Everybody has and makes errors in judgment because they believe their own hype and they haven't thought it through fully. And maybe there is an accountability partner and a voice of reason missing. That's why a financial
Mhm.
professional is so important in this area, and this era rather, because there's so many pieces of the puzzle, so many moving parts. And, hindsight is a cruel part of the human experience, right? Because now we can look back and go, well, that was obvious, but it wasn't obvious at the time. So, there's no doubt that we're in an era where this has to be addressed. And, you talk about the passage of time. Like, I still vividly remember Y2K. vividly. I remember where I was, the stage of and that's 25 years. And I think the next 25 are going to go by even faster. So
Dan.
we have to get out in front of that, especially just good decisions stem from strong positions. Being in a strong position where you've thought it through and you've got a blueprint, that just gives you a position of strength to make informed decisions going forward and not repeat errors and judgments. So, yeah, if nothing else, I think the takeaway there is be a serious student, be a planner. Like the plan is one thing, but the fluid and dynamic planning and just having that roadmap, absolutely critical.
I think often you might be nervous about even bringing this up with your client because you haven't even flushed this out yourself. And so to be putting yourself in a position to explain to your clients, if they come to you first and ask what's going to happen, you're put in the hot seat. So you'd rather be as the advisor, be proactive, have that plan in place. And I think advisors might be afraid of that because they're afraid of some of those questions that might get kicked back. So Duncan, from your perspective, what do clients really care about when they learn that the founder is stepping back or they're introducing someone else on their team?
Well, ultimately, all roads lead to self-interest. If I'm a client, and first of all, if I'm your client, and in my inside voice, I've got this sort of swirling around in my head, I might not be putting it out there. You've got to read the room and just get a sense for the fact that don't wait. But at the end of the day, what I'm thinking as a client is, how does this impact me?
Mm.
And I'm going to connect those dots in terms of, what you're saying and how that aligns with what I want to achieve in my life. And one thing that I've seen, the people who get it right, okay, and here we are. The people who get it right, they don't just fixate on the people, like the addition of people. They fixate on the practice and the process that makes the continuity of the people far more self-evident. So bottom line is, if you're my clients and I'm going to introduce you to a protege, I'm not just going to talk about his or her technical ability and core competencies and all the qualities and skills you would hope for. I will talk about that. And then I will talk about the fact that we have adopted and deployed best practices for consistency. We're running our business like a business. We have a process in place. So it's that person who's not left to their own devices. They're actually taking our practice and client experience and our process and making sure it's continual. That's what clients want to hear.
I had a client help me create the phraseology that is kind of where the rubber meets the road of what's important to them. And this goes back to when I started my career in my early 20s and I was cold calling and doing all the things to try and find clients. One of my little sayings was, I'm not going to retire in your retirement. And the problem with turning 50 is I'm not able to say that necessarily to certain clients coming in, because the reality is at some point I may not be doing this or not in the capacity. But what the client wants to know is they've entrusted, that fit process, bringing that client on, bridging that trust, earning the right to take over all of their wealth, comes with a responsibility of what I'm calling the kitchen table conversations that have to happen from time to time when a life event happens, death happens, marriage happens, births happen, funding things, dreams, goals. And what the clients want to know is, who is that person if it's not you? And how long do they get to know them before who's that person sitting at the kitchen table, going to have that kitchen table conversation? And one of the ways, using your phrase of growing down, is you can still be involved in the fit in bringing in clients, but sometimes it's stopping bringing on additional kitchen table conversations to your plate and allowing other people on the team to take those over or be a part of those from the beginning. Because if they're in there in the beginning, then they can have that trust to bridge. You can mentor and oversee. And the hard part for some of the succession is your decision of whether it's internal or external or how you're going to transition out. Is these are families, these are friends, these are people you've worked with your entire career that you're going to still interact with when you're no longer in the business. And the clients are going to tell you whether or not you were successful or not. You're going to find out after you do your succession plan whether it was successful, because your clients are going to tell you how they feel, how they're being treated, who's sitting in front of them, who's having those conversations. And if you're not proactively thinking about solving that problem, you're not looking at succession correctly.
Well, what you just hit on there, that is the art and science. The science is, the measurable, the quantitative, the tactics. Very, very important. That's teachable. That's easier. The qualitative, that bedside manner, that's very, very different. That's hard to teach. But here's the beauty. The more somebody buys into the importance of the practice and the process, it liberates them to be very, very deliberate about the bedside manner, that qualitative. And, I've been saying for years now, but the world's really catching up to this mindset that the more technology creeps into our lives, the more the human touch matters, the more that becomes an unmet need, because there are so many advisors that go all in just with technology and AI, artificial intelligence. They forget about the emotional intelligence and the fact that you're managing a relationship, you're managing a person with hopes and dreams and things that keep them up at night and all of that. So again, just to close that, the more somebody embraces the science of practice management, business development, and all of these other drivers, the more they're liberated to go into those unmet needs and those big areas that make an advisor feel worthy and therefore make the client feel comfortable. Hey, I'm in good hands. I'm on a good path. So I'm not surprised that you hit on that, but that is massive.
Yeah.
Well, and it's a succession of not looking for who's the rainmaker that's going to replace you listening to this. It's hiring what we call the caretaker, who is going to basically come in and have more empathy or have more desire to interact with that client on a relational level to be able to continue the relationship you had, even though you were the rainmaker. And the mistake I think too many advisors are doing is thinking they got to hire the junior rainmaker, when really, to maintain the practice, to free yourself up, it's having somebody else care for these clients.
Okay, you should be a coach, okay? Because I'm telling you something. I had this conversation last week with an advisor who's 5 years out from an exit, and he's telling me he's got to go out and hire a cold caller, right? A hunter-gatherer. And I'm like,
the door knocker.
Yeah. And I'm like, dude, you don't need a hunter-gatherer. You need a farmer. You need somebody to tend to what you've got. So rather than hire like this marketing guy, hire a director of client engagement whose sole responsibility is to just be proactive with existing clients, elevating how they feel and how they perceive belonging to this team and how they describe that to someone else. You might have to delay gratification with that role. They're not going to move the needle immediately, but you're going to competitor-proof clients. You're going to get in front of their money in motion, and you're going to be more referable. Do you want to attract strangers, or do you want to attract people that are tied to people you already have relationships with? So what you said is, oh my gosh. I mean, I hope this is recorded, because I would like to send that out to the world, because that is where we're at right now.
Oh. Well, it is recorded, so you can have a copy of it, Duncan. You can use it to your own leisure. But I think what is really important that you kind of both hit on there is you kind of have to be intentional about who that person is and what they're actually going to do. Because when you're transferring this trust in this relationship that you have spent 10, even in some cases 20 years building, that's not something that just happens really quickly, but true to the core, if you have the structure and the policies and the procedures in place, that the client has a similar experience, they're less guarded when they start building a relationship with someone else, because they have that anchor of consistency and what they've come to know and expect out of the firm. And so for the listener, Duncan, I want you to think of what would be your advice to them in making that transition a smooth transition? If they're kind of struggling with that let go, trying to put that next person in place, if they've kind of got that process there, how can they let go of it and make that a smoother transition?
Yeah, great earlier point, by the way, Kim, and then great question. I mean, the sort of knee-jerk reaction is, I just say, be a serious student. Like, autodidactic, self-study, immerse yourself into this. And where you feel appropriate, hire an accountability partner who can go sidecar with you as you strive to build this out so you're not reinventing the wheel. The other thing is, be very methodical and gradual about this. Now, and Tyson, you will have heard stories like this too, but we've had scenarios where somebody has had 30 days to do this, like for whatever reason, because critical life events don't just apply to advisors' clients. Sometimes they happen to advisors, and they're forced. I've heard it all, and it's not always great, right? But so if somebody is fortunate enough to have the gift of time to be gradual and methodical about it, seize on that. Don't take that for granted, and then immerse yourself. And I don't want to get into like a TED talk on this, but the first thing I come back to the whole nirvana thing. Like I just say, why is this so important to you? Like what does perfection look like for you? Get this out of your head. Let's galvanize this in terms of like a beacon, like a true north sort of lighthouse that you're going to move and use as part of your guidance. And then let's just build out the progression. And, it starts with, and this is counterintuitive as well, is that the most successful business owner has made himself or herself obsolete. I talked to an advisor in Chicago. We were talking about this, but he didn't really have a preset time for when he was going to transition. So I sort of forced the issue and I just said, okay, I want you to set a goal right now where you could take a 6-month sabbatical in 18 months. So manufacture a sense of urgency where your business could run like a Swiss watch and you don't need to be there. I know you're capable of doing anything and everything within the firm. Like, where you get the toner for the photocopier and who provides the Wi-Fi and the technicals. Like, but you could do anything and everything, but I want you to be in a position where you don't have to do anything. You don't have to, nothing. And I have many advisors who have done that, taken 3 to 6 months off, and they're in touch but out of reach, and it's incredible. Preparing clients, preparing the team, preparing themselves. But here, what happens is they get away from this notion of sort of maverick talent and skills to intellectual property and process. They can be put into somebody else's hands. And that is a very powerful approach. And the irony here, and Tyson, you know this because you've been around this block many times as an advisor to advisors, is that ironically, you make your business more valuable. The more your business is less dependent on you, the more valuable it becomes. So it's like this sort of qualitative form of forced savings. The more you work on your business, the more you're slamming money in the bank in terms of the value, your enterprise value. So there's so many benefits that come out of this.
Yeah, and if you're listening to this and you're honest with yourself, you're either already building this to be able to have this internal succession or be able to have this freedom, or you haven't. And then the question becomes, do you have the time to do it? Because that will have a lot to do with dictating whether or not you're going to be able to have a succession that's internal, or you may need to be finding an external partner or team that can come in and bring in the resources and the process and the other associates to help you be able to exit. Because you can't do this overnight. I mean, you just said to take a 6-month sabbatical, you might need 16 to 18 months to put it into place. And did you build the team that can take it over, or did you build the team and you've been leading your team in such a way that they're dependent on you to do their jobs, which really doesn't allow them to be that internal succession? Because if you're not there, they can't do the job.
Well, it's interesting because I had a conversation with one of our coaches yesterday about the concept of time. Everybody's got 24 hours in the day. But when somebody is honest with themselves and they do a time audit, in terms of how they allocate time, you get into this push and pull dynamic. If people will schedule the time to work on themselves and work on the business, make it a priority, don't It's like paying yourself first. You don't wait until the end of the month and see how much is left that you can invest. No, you take out 10 or 20% right off the top, and then you work with what's left. It's the same with time. So invariably, especially advisors that have gotten traction, they are being pulled in so many different directions that they convince themselves, I don't have time to push. Okay. They've got to schedule the time. They've got, like I say to advisors, I say to anybody in business, schedule a recurring meeting with yourself, 1 hour a day, same time, same place, every day, to tune out the world and work on your business, work on yourself. Don't wait for that time to present itself. Schedule that hour, give it the same level of importance as you would a client meeting.
Hmm.
And just tune out the world, work on yourself, and let that incrementalism compound. And lo and behold, gradually and then suddenly, you get traction.
I'm thinking of the concept of time. In external transactions that are taking place in the private equity space, the maximum value that you're going to get is usually with almost a 5-year retainer or 5-year earnout, because they have realized it takes that long to transition this relationship to someone else or to another process or another system that makes that works for the client. Because at the end of the day, that's who matters in all of this. And I'm thinking of an advisor that I know that waited until he was holding his grandson and then realized, I want out, I want to be a grandpa, I want to go do this. But now he has to sign up for this 5-year exit that by the time he's done working out of that, his grandchild's going to be in school, and then all of a sudden that time that he wanted to have, he can't have. And so you can't wait till that life event happens and stares you in the face and helps you realize you didn't plan correctly. You really need to figure out your why behind what do you want to be in the future? What role do you want to play in your family and those that you love and those that are coming into your family or those that are exiting when it comes to your parents? And what responsibilities do you have? And do you have the time to build the team to do that? Or do you need to find a team to help you do that? But the reality is if you wait till this is a crisis or it's an immediacy, you're either not going to get the value of what your firm is worth, you're either going to make a sacrifice that you didn't mean to make for your time, or your clients are going to be affected.
Well, and Tyson, that leads to the bigger conversation kind of around the process equity and like the client experience as part of like your succession tool. If you do not have the time in your practice or in the runway to get out in the time frame that you need, you're going to need to bring in somebody else who can put those processes in place so that you can step out of the way. Or if you've built your practice in a way, it might shorten your runway, that you might already have some of that done. You just kind of need that kick in the pants to kind of finish it. And maybe it is the triggering event of holding your grandson, or unfortunately, it could be a life event with your health event with your spouse. But you have to make sure that you're making incremental steps to get there, because in those catastrophic instances we've seen, the outcome is never good for the advisor, for the team, or for the client. And so at the end of the day, you owe it to yourself, you owe it to your family to start continuing to make progress in it. The idea of succession is a whale. You're never going to eat it unless you start one bite at a time. Plain and simple.
So Duncan, let's talk a little bit about some of the resources that you have, I think, evolved in the almost 3 decades now of doing the coaching and consulting around succession. So if somebody's listening to this and they don't know where to start, you have some help. What is that?
Well, the first thing, I'm not saying this is the first thing, but the first thing that comes to mind is I like to remind financial professionals that they are in the knowledge for profit business. You think for a living. You're not selling things, widgets, tangibles. You're promoting the promise of the future. And you've actually graduated from the knowledge economy to the expertise economy because there's so much complexity. So the first thing, and if you look at the book, The Founder's Mentality, and how complexity is that silent killer of growth, demystify everything by getting it out of your head. Again, everything that you know that resides solely in your head is a skill. It's valuable, but it can be made more valuable if it goes from a skill to intellectual property. Now, my version of SOP is if it's standardized, optimized, and professionalized, which means once you start to get it out of your head, you start to really give it order, give it structure, create a playbook, create a procedures manual for your way. Now, again, that normally took somebody 18 months to build out. What's crazy now with AI, I've seen the 18 months go down to 90 days. And it's the quality of the prompting. And I don't know if you guys have seen this yet. We just recently came up with our AI white paper for the financial professional, but for all intents and purposes, it's universal. Accountants, lawyers, any other knowledge for profit professional, and for the most part, philosophically, any entrepreneur. Like I said to an advisor the other day, I said, you've got a team of five really good quality messengers who are left to their own devices, who represent your business with 5 different messages. They're all good people and they all care, but you have to make that more cohesive. So the first thing I told them to do is I said, go to ChatGPT and just prompt this. Just say, I am a financial advisor. I lead a team of 5. We're trying to elevate the client experience. Build me an org chart of roles and responsibilities so we can elevate the client experience. And wait 3 seconds, and you'll have a template in your hands. That's like the letter A in the alphabet. If you'll chip away incrementally, you could have your playbook, you could have everything out of everyone's head. You're not at the mercy of any maverick talent. You've made yourself scalable. You've made yourself your business more valuable because you've got it digitally and physically organized. That is, we're in an era now where it's non-optional, and now the tools are all in your hands. Like you can just bring this to life like that. So that to me is a starting point.
No, that's really helpful because I think advisor might often try and figure out like how do I even take this next foray into even just how do I even start? It can be really confusing when they're sitting there thinking it's too big. So if you're listening to this and you're kind of confused about how do you even do that, Duncan, I think one thing that would be helpful is what would be the best way for our listeners to get in touch with you? Because of like, clearly this is not something I'm going to do on my own. How can I step into a relationship with a coach? Talk to them about that.
Well, and yeah, I mean, you look at the top performers in any field of endeavor, whether it's an athlete, a business professional, anybody, they don't try to do it on their own. They have accountability partners. They have people that will respectfully nag them into the best version of themselves. People like you, very self-motivated, but we all tend to drift, and a coach can sort of help you catch it early and make the mid-course correction to bring you back on track, because direction determines outcome, right? So yeah, there's many benefits from that, but I will say there's a self-fulfilling element. If somebody's self-motivated, if nobody wants it more than you do, AI can put all the tools in your hands incredibly fast. It can become effectively a virtual coach, at least to take you to the red zone. You might need somebody to take you home fully and completely. But just the quality of the prompts, just think out loud when you're talking, like, for example, I say to a business owner, I say, okay, role, goal, soul. Tell AI who you are and who your addressable audience is. Tell AI what the objective is, and then ask it to humanize it a little bit. And I'll give you an example. Talking to a financial advisor about creating their playbook. And oh, this sounds like work. It's so big. And what's the point? And all of this. And I said, just go to ChatGPT and just say, I'm a financial advisor. I lead a team of 4. I work primarily with successful business owners, professionals, executives. Build me a framework for a procedures manual so that I can put distance between myself and the pack. 3 seconds, there's the framework. And I said, that's like a flight plan. Okay, you're a pilot. You've got the skill. You could probably wing it and just do it in your sleep. But no, you have a checklist. That's your checklist. You could take your business to the next level and crack the code fully in 90 days just from that checklist. So the information and the protocols that are in the palm of our hands now it's probably going to be the greatest time to be alive, let alone to be a business owner and professional over the course of the next 5 to 10 years, in my view.
I'm listening to this and I'm thinking, okay, I just got to go figure out on AI, but the urgent's crowding out the important, and you still have a consulting business and you have the Blue Book method. Where for somebody that is maybe 10 years out from or longer from a succession, where are you able to come in and help versus somebody that's I've probably this 3 to 5 year window to get this right?
Well, and this might sound a little bit cosmic, but the first thing I do say to our advisors, the clients that we work with, is I just say to them, can I just take a moment to just encourage you to pinch yourself and just have immense gratitude for what you have? Like, could you just take a second to appreciate what you've got as you aspire to all the things you want? Because I come to realize in life, I mean, we are what we lack. We tend to focus on what's missing. And I said to an advisor the other day, I said, okay, yeah, I know you wish you would have done some things 5 years ago. And you're saying, like, back to your point about the grandkid, a similar conversation. And I said, yeah, I know you've got some hindsight, woulda, coulda, shoulda. But I said, 200 years ago, the average lifespan was 40. And here you are on the verge of 60. You're healthy. You've got, let's be honest, you have a business that's way more significant than you ever thought you. Can you just take a moment to savor that? And then just be at peace with everything? Like, just detach yourself from expectations and immerse yourself in appreciation. Can you just give yourself permission to do that as a jumping off point? We'll get to mapping out your game plan, and we'll invest the past into the future. Don't worry about that, but just please don't take anything for granted. Not everybody sort of gets that or appreciates it, but I try in my life now just to not take anything for granted at all. And I think it just liberates somebody to just basically say, okay, I'm very lucky, I'm very fortunate, and I have a responsibility to get some things right. So I'm not even sure if that's what you were asking, but that's something that I think is just really important.
Well, and Dan Sullivan from Strategic Coach wrote a great book, The Gap or the Gain, with the mindset of we all stress ourselves out of the gap of where we aren't to our goals or to our ideal self or to whatever. And the whole concept of the book is to start from the premise that you were talking about, which is to recognize the gains you've made from when you started in the business, or from when you first got married, or from when you graduated college, or when you were little and you thought what the future was going to look like and where you're at today. And from that foundation, then look at the goals and the things that you want to do. Because I think we stress ourselves out and lose sight of, hey, we get to help people. This is and get paid. It's fantastic.
Very true. And kind of giving yourself the opportunity to have that perspective and reflection is huge, because if you're always striving and you're always going and going, you're not taking that moment. And so, Duncan, before we wrap it up today, I think you brought some really great points for you listening to understand, is that your goal is to separate yourself from the pack. You have to have the team, but you have to give them the process and the policy and the structure, so that as the visionary, you can really step away and let your team be successful as you figure out how to grow down in your business and really get to the lane of what you really want to focus on. And so I just want to thank you for that. But I would just love to see, is there anything else you'd like to make sure you leave the listeners with today?
Well, first of all, great job. And again, your credibility as a team is in fact unrivaled, because you're living this every single day and you're bringing this to life. And Tyson, I remember conversations you and I have had 15 years ago, and all roads always left to how did the client benefit? Okay, just all roads lead to that outcome, and everything will take care of itself. So kudos to you for being consistent in your mindset and your approach there. But I think what I would say is, number one, be a serious student. Like, the clay is soft. the most effective people who are limitless, like plateau avoidance is achieved. And I mean, how high is high? Be a serious student because everything's out there. All the knowledge exists. So be a serious student. Commit yourself to process. Develop and refine a process that puts everything together for you to create consistency. That's an intellectual property. And then thirdly, again, just be at peace with how things play out. Cause and effect. Focus on the activity, the productivity. And I love sort of capping off with a little soundbite from Hemingway, who said, the goal is not to be superior to someone else. The goal is to be superior to your former self. I couldn't say it better. You could stay up all night and not think of that. I mean, it's so profound. So that's what I would say. Serious student, commitment to process, be at peace with how it plays out.
Tyson, I think you always have some way to wrap this up. What do you want to leave the listeners with today?
Yeah, so the theme behind Total Succession was how a financial advisor can retire, be fully compensated, and yet keep their clients' interests first. And what I want to break the mindset for you that's listening to this is you can create a succession plan that can leave your clients better than even yourself. What does that look like? And then you have to realize that it's not waiting for the succession event to implement that. It starts now. Define it and then communicate it to the clients and repeat it to the clients, because the transition of those trusted relationships take time. The client deserves the time. And where we have acquired 3 different practices that were basically the emergency overnights, there are teams and resources that you can partner with in those types of settings. But you can decide how you want to have it done on your terms and what that better off is for the client if you start working at it now.
Very true. Thank you for that. So that's a wrap on today's episode. Thanks again, Duncan, for joining us. I have a feeling we'll have you back.
Absolute pleasure. This never feels like work. It's always good to catch up with you.
Wonderful. Thank you. And we'll be back soon with more conversations like this.
These conversations are designed to support your next move, however close or far it may be. Tap subscribe and let each episode guide you closer to a confident, well-planned exit. I've wrestled with these things myself, and that's exactly why I created something to help you do it with less stress and more direction. My book, Total Succession, is now available on Amazon. Inside, I break the process down into 5 clear steps to help you exit on your terms with confidence, full compensation, and your client's best interests at heart. You can also visit totalsuccession.com/podcast to download a free starter guide that walks you through my SPACE framework: see, prepare, act, commit, exit. Remember, you only exit your business once. Create the space to do it well. Thanks for listening. Until next time.